The air hung thick and heavy over Lakewood on the evening of November 3, 1998. By 6:47 p.m., the temperature had dropped to 68 degrees Fahrenheit. Unseasonably warm for early November in Jacksonville, Florida. A steady breeze rustled through the oak trees lining Lakewood's quiet streets, carrying with it the faint smell of freshly cut grass and saltwater from the St. Johns River 3 miles east. Lakewood was a neighborhood of 12,400 residents, a modest working-class enclave where children still rode bicycles without helmets and neighbors knew each other's first names. It was the kind of place where front doors stayed unlocked until bedtime, where block parties happened spontaneously on summer evenings, where everyone waved. At 6:47 p.m. on November 3, 1998, 8-year-old Maddie Clifton was last seen playing outside her home on Caesarea Boulevard, wearing denim shorts, a purple Florida Marlins t-shirt, and white sneakers with pink laces she'd tied herself that morning. She had freckles across her nose, long brown hair pulled into a ponytail, and a smile that made adults stop and smile back. Maddie loved soccer, played clarinet in her elementary school band, collected seashells from Jacksonville Beach, and had a reputation for including kids other children ignored. Her third-grade teacher once said Maddie had the kind of heart that made the world kinder just by being in it. By 7:15 p.m., Maddie's mother, Sheila Clifton, called her name from the front porch. No answer. By 7:30 p.m., Sheila walked the block, asking neighbors if they'd seen her daughter. By 7:45 p.m., panic began to creep into her voice. By 8:02 p.m., she dialed 911. What happened in the hours between 6:47 p.m. and 8:02 p.m. would haunt Jacksonville for decades, shatter a community's sense of safety, and raise questions that still echo today. How could a child vanish from her own street? How could evil hide so close, for so long, in such an ordinary place? If you're captivated by this story and want to hear more deep-dive investigations into cases that changed communities forever, please subscribe to our channel. We bring you the facts, the evidence, and the human stories behind the headlines. Maddie Clifton wakes at 6:30 a.m. on November 3, 1998. Her mother hears her moving around upstairs, humming a tune from The Lion King, Hakuna Matata, her favorite. Sheila Clifton is in the kitchen preparing oatmeal, listening to the morning news on a small radio perched on the counter. The forecast calls for partly cloudy skies, high of 76 degrees Fahrenheit, a typical late autumn day in northeast Florida. Maddie comes downstairs wearing her school uniform, navy blue skirt, white polo shirt, knee-high socks. She eats quickly, chattering about an upcoming clarinet recital and a spelling test on Friday. Her younger brother, Alex, age 6, sits across from her, coloring a dinosaur with a green crayon. At 7:42 a.m., Sheila drives Maddie and Alex to Southside Elementary School, a squat brick building with a faded mural of a panther painted on the side. Maddie kisses her mother on the cheek before climbing out of the blue Honda Civic. "Love you, Mom," she says, slinging her backpack over one shoulder. Sheila watches her daughter disappear through the front doors, waving at another parent in the drop-off line. The school day passes without incident. Maddie scores a 92 on her math quiz. At lunch, she sits with her best friend, Cassie Torres, and they trade fruit snacks. During recess, Maddie plays soccer with a group of boys and girls, her ponytail swinging as she dribbles the ball toward the makeshift goal. Her teacher, Mrs. Angela Ramirez, later recalls that Maddie seemed perfectly normal, happy, energetic, excited about the weekend. At 2:45 p.m., the school bell rings. Maddie boards the yellow bus that drops her at the corner of Caesarea Boulevard and Delwood Avenue at 3:18 p.m. Sheila is waiting at the bus stop with Alex. They walk the 2 blocks home together, Maddie skipping ahead, stopping occasionally to examine a fallen acorn or a caterpillar inching across the sidewalk. At home, Maddie has a snack, apple slices with peanut butter, and watches cartoons for 30 minutes. At 4 p.m., she asks her mother if she can go outside to play. "Stay on the block," Sheila says, standing at the kitchen sink washing dishes. "And be home by dinner." 6:30. "Okay, Mom," Maddie says, already halfway out the door. Sheila watches through the window as Maddie walks down the driveway, skateboard under one arm. She sees her daughter cross the street toward the Phillips house, where Joshua Phillips, a 14-year-old neighbor, sometimes plays basketball in the driveway. Sheila thinks nothing of it. Joshua is quiet, polite, keeps to himself. His family has lived on Caesarea Boulevard for 3 years. His mother, Melissa Phillips, occasionally borrows sugar or offers rides to school when Sheila's car won't start. Joshua babysits sometimes for younger kids in the neighborhood. He seems like a good kid. At 4:22 p.m., a neighbor, Carol Jensen, sees Maddie standing near the Phillips driveway, bouncing a basketball. Carol waves from her porch. Maddie waves back. That is the last confirmed sighting of Maddie Clifton by an independent witness. At 5:30 p.m., Sheila calls Maddie's name from the front porch. No answer. The street is quiet. A few children are riding bicycles at the far end of the block. Sheila assumes Maddie is playing in someone's backyard, lost track of time. She returns inside, stirring a pot of spaghetti sauce on the stove. At 6:15 p.m., Sheila steps outside again. Maddie, dinner. Her voice carries down the block. Still no answer. She walks toward the corner, peering into yards, calling her daughter's name. A knot of worry begins to tighten in her chest. At 6:35 p.m., Sheila knocks on the door of the Torres house. Have you seen Maddie? Cassie's mother, Linda Torres, shakes her head. Not since this morning at school. Sheila knocks on 3 more doors. No one has seen Maddie. By 7 p.m., Sheila's worry has turned to fear. She calls her husband, Steve Clifton, who is working the evening shift at a construction site downtown. Maddie's not home, Sheila says, her voice trembling. I can't find her anywhere. I'm on my way, Steve says. At 7:30 p.m., Steve arrives home. He and Sheila split up, walking different streets, shouting Maddie's name. Neighbors begin to emerge from their homes, joining the search. Within 30 minutes, 20 people are walking the neighborhood, flashlights cutting through the dimming twilight. Someone calls the local police. At 8:02 p.m., Sheila Clifton dials 911. Jacksonville Sheriff's Office, what's your emergency? My daughter is missing. She's 8 years old. She didn't come home for dinner. I can't find her. The dispatcher's voice is calm, methodical. When did you last see her? Around 4 o'clock. She went outside to play. She always comes home by 6:30. She's never late. What's your address? 5214 Caesarea Boulevard. We're sending officers right now. Stay by your phone. At 8:17 p.m., 2 Jacksonville Sheriff's Office patrol cars pull onto Caesarea Boulevard, red and blue lights casting long shadows across the lawns. Officers speak with Sheila and Steve, taking notes. What was Maddie wearing? Purple Marlins t-shirt, denim shorts, white sneakers. Does she have a cell phone? No. Does she know not to talk to strangers? Yes. Has she ever run away before? Never. By 9 p.m., more officers arrive. K-9 unit is dispatched. Sergeant Michael Tanner, a 22-year veteran of the department, takes charge of the scene. He organizes the growing crowd of neighbors into search teams, assigning them specific streets, alleys, parks. We're going to find her, he tells Sheila. We're going to bring her home. By 10 p.m., the search expands. Helicopters circle overhead, their spotlights sweeping across backyards and vacant lots. Volunteers knock on every door within a 6-block radius. Have you seen this girl? They hold up a recent school photo of Maddie, her smile wide, her eyes bright. By midnight, more than 200 people are searching. The temperature has dropped to 62 degrees Fahrenheit. Sheila Clifton stands in her front yard, wrapped in a blanket, watching the organized chaos unfold around her. She hasn't eaten. She hasn't cried. She is numb. At 1:30 a.m., the search is suspended until dawn. Officers assure the Cliftons they'll resume at first light. Kids sometimes hide, Sergeant Tanner says gently. They fall asleep in a closet under a bed. We'll find her. But Sheila knows. Somewhere deep in her chest, in the place where mothers know things, she knows something is terribly wrong. At 6 a.m. on November 4, 1998, as the first light breaks over Jacksonville, the search resumes. The temperature is 58 degrees Fahrenheit, the coldest morning of the season so far. Officers in navy blue uniforms fill the streets, radios crackling with updates. A command center is set up in the parking lot of Southside Elementary School, 2 blocks from the Clifton home. Tables are covered with maps, grids drawn in red marker, dividing the neighborhood into search zones labeled a through F. By 7 a.m., more than 400 volunteers have gathered. They stand in clusters, drinking coffee from thermoses, waiting for instructions. Some are neighbors. Others are strangers who heard the news on the radio and drove from across Jacksonville. A local church, Riverside Baptist, sends 50 members. The National Guard is requested and arrives by mid-morning. Soldiers in camouflage moving methodically through wooded areas near the St. Johns River. K-9 units work the streets. German shepherds strain against their leashes, noses to the ground, searching for Maddie's scent. Officers knock on doors, asking to search backyards, sheds, garages. Homeowners comply without hesitation. Check anywhere, they say. Please, just find her. At 9:30 a.m., a Fleur helicopter, equipped with thermal imaging, flies low over the neighborhood, its cameras scanning for heat signatures. The pilot radios down. Nothing. Only dogs, cats, and the warm hoods of cars. By noon on November 4th, the story has gone regional. Local news stations broadcast live from Cicerie Boulevard. Reporters stand in front of the Clifton home, microphones in hand, describing the frantic search and the tight-knit community in crisis. Maddie's school photo appears on television screens across Northeast Florida. The ticker at the bottom of the screen reads, 8-year-old missing in Lakewood. Massive search underway. ***. Sheila and Steve Clifton make a tearful plea on camera. Sheila's voice breaks as she speaks. Maddie, if you can hear me, we love you. We're looking for you. Please come home. Steve stands beside her, jaw clenched, eyes red. If someone has our daughter, please let her go. She's just a little girl. She's everything to us. The FBI is notified. Special Agent Laura Keene, a specialist in child abduction cases, arrives from the Jacksonville field office. She interviews the Cliftons, asking difficult questions. Does Maddie have any enemies? No. Are there custody disputes? No. Have there been any strangers in the neighborhood? No. Any suspicious vehicles? No. Agent Keene reviews the timeline. Maddie was last seen at 4:22 p.m. by Carol Jensen. She vanished sometime between 4:22 p.m. and 6:15 p.m., a window of less than 2 hours in broad daylight on a residential street where neighbors were home. No screams. No signs of struggle. No witnesses. This suggests, Agent Keene tells Sergeant Tanner, that Maddie either went willingly with someone she knew, or she was taken very quickly, very quietly, by someone familiar with the area. By the evening of November 4th, the search radius expands to a 2-mile perimeter. Volunteers comb through drainage ditches, abandoned buildings, construction sites. Divers search retention ponds. Nothing. On November 5th, the third day, local businesses donate food and water to the volunteers. A McDonald's on Phillips Highway provides 300 hamburgers. A grocery store sends cases of bottled water. The community center on Cicerie Boulevard becomes a volunteer hub, where people sign in, receive assignments, and return with updates. On a corkboard near the entrance, someone pins a handwritten note. Bring Maddie home. Sheila Clifton cannot sleep. She walks the neighborhood at night, calling her daughter's name into the darkness. Neighbors find her at 3 a.m., standing in the middle of the street, and gently guide her back home. Steve takes time off work. He drives the streets during the day, stopping strangers, showing them Maddie's photo. Have you seen her? Please, have you seen her? On November 6th, the fourth day, psychics call the Clifton home, claiming to have visions. One says Maddie is near water. Another says she's in a wooded area. A third says she's in a building with a blue door. Police follow up on every tip, no matter how unlikely. None lead anywhere. On November 7th, The 5th day, hope begins to thin. Volunteers still come, but in smaller numbers. The media presence shifts. News vans pack up. Reporters move on to other stories. Sergeant Tanner tells his officers to prepare for the worst. "We're looking for a body now," he says quietly. On November 8th, the 6th day, the search continues, but the energy has changed. There are fewer shouts, fewer people running between houses. The search feels mechanical, procedural. Officers walk with their heads down, flashlights sweeping under bushes, behind fences. They are looking for something small, something hidden. On November 9th, the 7th day, Melissa Phillips, Joshua's mother, notices a smell in her house. At 10:30 a.m. on November 9th, 1998, Melissa Phillips stands in the hallway of her home at 5218 Cicely Boulevard, 4 houses down from the Cliftons. She has noticed an odor for the past 2 days, faint at first, then growing stronger. Smells like rot, like something dead. She assumes it's a dead animal, a rat in the walls, a possum under the porch. She has checked the garage, the attic, the crawl space. Nothing. The smell is strongest near Joshua's bedroom. Melissa knocks on her son's door. Joshua, 14, is sitting at his desk, headphones on, listening to a CD. He looks up when his mother enters. He is thin, pale, with dark hair that falls over his forehead. He wears an oversized Florida Gators sweatshirt and gym shorts. "Josh, what's that smell?" Melissa asks. Joshua shrugs. "I don't smell anything. It smells like something died in here. Maybe it's outside," Joshua says, not meeting her eyes. Melissa walks around the room, sniffing. The smell is overwhelming near the bed. She kneels down, peering underneath. She sees crumpled clothes, old sneakers, a baseball bat. She reaches under the bed, pulling items out. Then her hand touches something soft, something that gives under her fingers. She pulls back the edge of the mattress and screams. At 10:47 a.m., Melissa Phillips calls 911. "There's a body under my son's bed." Within minutes, police cars converge on 5218 Cicely Boulevard. Officers pour into the house. Sergeant Tanner is among the first to enter Joshua's bedroom. He kneels beside the bed, lifts the mattress, and sees what Melissa Phillips saw. The body of a small child, wrapped in a blue tarp, partially decomposed, hidden in the shallow space beneath a teenage boy's bed. It is Maddie Clifton. At 11:15 a.m., Joshua Phillips is taken into custody. He does not resist. He does not speak. Officers place him in handcuffs and lead him to a patrol car. Neighbors watch from their porches, confusion and horror etched on their faces. Joshua, quiet, polite Joshua, the boy who mowed Mrs. Jensen's lawn, the boy who babysat the Torres kids? At 11:30 a.m., Sergeant Tanner walks 4 houses down to the Clifton residence. Sheila answers the door. She looks at his face and knows. "We found her," Tanner says. Sheila collapses. The Phillips house becomes a crime scene. Yellow tape encircles the property. Forensic investigators in white suits enter through the front door, carrying cases of equipment. Neighbors stand across the street, whispering, crying, unable to comprehend what is happening. Inside Joshua's bedroom, the scene is meticulously documented. Photographs are taken from every angle. The body is carefully removed from under the bed and placed in a black body bag labeled evidence. Clifton, 110998. The mattress is lifted and examined. Blood is found on the carpet beneath the bed, soaked into the padding, dried to a dark brown. A detective uses a ceramic knife to scrape samples, placing them in sealed plastic bags marked Sample 1A, Sample 1B. A baseball bat is found under the bed, near where the body lay. It is wooden Louisville Slugger with dark stains on the barrel. A forensic technician sprays the bat with luminol. Under UV light, the stains glow bright blue hemoglobin. Blood. The bed frame is disassembled. More blood is found on the wooden slats. A hair is discovered, brown, 8 inches long, consistent with Maddie's hair length. It is placed in a small evidence envelope. The walls are examined. There are no bloodstains on the walls, no signs of a struggle. The room looks like a typical teenager's room. Posters of rock bands, a stereo, a pile of dirty laundry. Except for the blood under the bed. The medical examiner arrives at 1 p.m. Dr. Sandra Ortiz, chief medical examiner for Duval County, kneels beside the body bag in the front yard, opening it carefully. She examines Maddie's remains, noting visible injuries. The body is in an advanced state of decomposition, having been hidden for 7 days in a warm, enclosed space. Flies have laid eggs. Maggots are present. The smell is overwhelming. Dr. Ortiz documents external injuries. Blunt force trauma to the head, lacerations on the back, bruising on the arms. She notes defensive wounds on Maddie's hands, scratches, broken fingernails, indicating she fought back. The body is transported to the medical examiner's office for autopsy. At 3 p.m., investigators search the rest of the Phillips house. In the garage, they find a blue tarp rolled up in a corner, matching the tarp found wrapped around Maddie's body. In the laundry room, they find Joshua's clothes from November 3rd. A white t-shirt, blue jeans, soaked in bleach, partially cleaned. Blood is still visible on the collar of the t-shirt. Samples are collected. In the bathroom, luminol reveals blood traces in the sink, the tub, the floor. Someone attempted to clean up, but blood is nearly impossible to completely remove. It seeps into grout, into cracks, into the porous surfaces beneath tile. The luminol exposes it all, glowing like constellations under UV light. At 5 p.m., the autopsy begins. Dr. Ortiz works methodically, documenting each injury. Maddie Clifton died from blunt force trauma to the head and stab wounds to the torso. The blows to her head were consistent with being struck by a cylindrical object, such as a baseball bat. The stab wounds were inflicted with a sharp object, possibly a knife. The injuries were fatal. Maddie would have died within minutes. Dr. Ortiz notes that Maddie was still alive when she was placed under the bed. Defensive wounds suggest she was conscious, fighting. This was not a quick death. This was prolonged, terrified, agonizing. The toxicology report shows no drugs, no alcohol. Maddie Clifton was a healthy 8-year-old girl who died violently at the hands of someone she trusted. At 6 p.m. on November 9, 1998, Joshua Phillips sits in an interrogation room at the Jacksonville Sheriff's Office. The room is small, windowless, lit by a single fluorescent bulb. A table sits in the center. Joshua is on one side, Detective Brian Houseman on the other. A camera in the corner records everything. Detective Houseman is 41. A father of 3, a veteran investigator with the Crimes Against Children Unit. He has interviewed hundreds of suspects, pedophiles, abusers, killers, but he has never interviewed a 14-year-old accused of murdering his neighbor. Joshua, do you understand why you're here? Houseman asks. Joshua nods. He is small for his age, his hands cuffed in front of him. He stares at the table. You need to tell me what happened. For a long time, Joshua says nothing. Then, quietly, it was an accident. Houseman leans forward. Tell me about the accident. Joshua speaks slowly, his voice barely above a whisper. He says Maddie came to his house on November 3rd, around 4:30 p.m., asking if he wanted to play. He was in his room playing video games. He told her he was busy, but she kept asking. He says he went outside with her, and they were playing near his front yard. He says he accidentally hit her with a baseball bat while swinging it. He says she started crying, bleeding. He panicked. I didn't want my dad to find out, Joshua says. He gets really mad. Houseman asks what happened next. Joshua says he brought Maddie inside his house into his bedroom. He says she was still alive, still bleeding. He didn't know what to do. He says he tried to stop the bleeding, but it wouldn't stop. He says he stabbed her with a knife, he doesn't remember why. He says she stopped moving. He says he panicked and hid her body under his bed. Why didn't you call for help? Houseman asks. I was scared. Scared of what? My dad. Joshua describes his father, Lawrence Phillips, as strict, violent, prone to explosive anger. He says his father beats him, yells at him, tells him he's worthless. He says he was terrified of what his father would do if he found out. Houseman takes notes. The story doesn't add up. An accidental hit with a baseball bat doesn't explain the stab wounds. Panic doesn't explain hiding a body for 7 days while an entire community searched. Fear of a father doesn't explain the lack of remorse. But Joshua is 14. He is a minor. His confession, recorded and signed, is enough for an arrest. At 8 p.m., Joshua Phillips is formally charged with first-degree murder. On November 10, 1998, the news spreads. 14-year-old arrested in Maddie Clifton murder. The headline dominates local television, radio, newspapers. Reporters descend on Caesarea Boulevard once again, this time focusing on the Phillips house. Neighbors are interviewed, their faces pale with shock. He seemed like a normal kid, Carol Jensen tells a reporter. Quiet, polite. He mowed my lawn last summer. I gave him $20. I can't believe it. Linda Torres, Cassie's mother, stands on her porch, shaking her head. He babysat my kids. I trusted him. How could he do this? At Southside Elementary School, grief counselors are brought in. Children cry in hallways, clutching their parents. Teachers struggle to explain what happened. How do you tell an 8-year-old that another 8-year-old was murdered by a teenager they all knew? The Clifton family releases a brief statement. We are devastated. We have lost our daughter, our light, our everything. We ask for privacy as we grieve. At Riverside Baptist Church, a vigil is held on November 11th. More than 800 people attend. They light candles, sing hymns, pray for Maddie's soul. Sheila and Steve Clifton stand at the front, holding each other, barely able to stand. Pastor David Grant speaks. Evil came to our neighborhood, he says, but it will not define us. Maddie's light will not be extinguished. We will remember her laughter, her kindness, her joy. But the community is fractured. Trust has been shattered. Parents no longer let their children play outside unsupervised. Doors are locked, even during the day. Neighbors look at each other with suspicion. If Joshua Phillips could do this, what else might be hiding behind closed doors? At the Phillips house, the family is ostracized. Melissa Phillips receives death threats. Her tires are slashed. Someone spray paints murderer's mother on her garage door. She and her husband, Lawrence, move out within 2 weeks, leaving Jacksonville for an undisclosed location. In the weeks following the arrest, prosecutors prepare their case. Assistant State Attorney Christine O'Connell is assigned to lead the prosecution. She is 38, a mother of 2, known for her relentless preparation and her ability to connect with juries. She has prosecuted dozens of homicides, but never one involving a 14-year-old defendant. The legal question is immediate. Should Joshua Phillips be tried as an adult or a juvenile? Florida law allows prosecutors to transfer juvenile defendants to adult court in cases involving serious crimes. The decision is not automatic. It requires a hearing, evidence, arguments. But the brutality of the crime, the premeditation suggested by the cover-up, and the public outcry all weigh in favor of adult prosecution. On December 15, 1998, a transfer hearing is held. Joshua's defense attorney, Richard Koritz, argues that Joshua should remain in the juvenile system. He presents evidence of Joshua's troubled home life, testimony from school counselors, medical records documenting injuries consistent with abuse, psychological evaluations describing Joshua as a victim of long-term trauma. This is a child who has been beaten, terrorized, and broken by his father. Koritz argues, what happened to Maddie Clifton is a tragedy, but Joshua Phillips is also a victim. He needs treatment, not life in prison. Prosecutor O'Connell counters. This was not a moment of panic. This was a calculated act of violence followed by a week-long cover-up. Joshua Phillips hid a little girl's body under his bed while her family searched desperately. He went to school. He ate dinner. He slept above her corpse. That is not the behavior of a traumatized child. That is the behavior of someone capable of cold, deliberate evil. On January 8, 1999, Judge Elizabeth Centerfit rules. Joshua Phillips will be tried as an adult. The trial is scheduled for July 1999. Between January and July, forensic analysts process the evidence. DNA testing in 1999 is not as advanced as it will become in later years, but it is sufficient. Blood samples from the baseball bat, the carpet, and Joshua's clothing all match Maddie Clifton. DNA from skin cells under Maddie's fingernails matches Joshua Phillips. The medical examiner's report is damning. Maddie sustained multiple blows to the head, at least 4, possibly more. She sustained 7 stab wounds to her torso, chest, and back. The wounds were inflicted with significant force. The pattern suggests rage, not panic. Forensic psychologist Dr. Michael Brannon interviews Joshua over a period of 3 months. His evaluation is submitted to the court. Dr. Brannon concludes that Joshua exhibits traits consistent with conduct disorder, a lack of empathy, and an ability to compartmentalize traumatic events. However, Dr. Brannon does not diagnose Joshua as a psychopath. He is capable of understanding right from wrong, Dr. Brannon writes. His actions were deliberate. The defense hires its own expert, Dr. Linda Harper, a forensic psychiatrist specializing in juvenile offenders. Dr. Harper evaluates Joshua and reaches a different conclusion. She diagnoses Joshua with post-traumatic stress disorder, PTSD, stemming from years of abuse. She argues that Joshua's actions on November 3rd were a dissociative episode, a moment where his mind shut down under extreme stress. He was in survival mode, Dr. Harper writes. He was not thinking rationally. The battle of experts will play out in court. As the trial approaches, both families struggle. The Cliftons attend every pretrial hearing, sitting in the front row, staring at Joshua Phillips with expressions that shift between grief and rage. Sheila has lost weight. Her face is gaunt, her eyes hollow. Steve has aged a decade in 6 months. Their son, Alex, now 7, has nightmares. He asks when Maddie is coming home. They don't know how to answer. The Phillips family, by contrast, is nearly invisible. Melissa Phillips does not attend hearings. Lawrence Phillips appears once, sitting in the back row, arms crossed, face expressionless. When reporters approach, he refuses to comment. Joshua remains in juvenile detention, awaiting trial. He is separated from other inmates due to his age and the nature of his crime. He spends 23 hours a day in a small cell, allowed 1 hour for recreation. He reads books, draws pictures, writes letters to his mother. In one letter, leaked to the press, he writes, "I'm sorry for what I did. I didn't mean to hurt anyone. I wish I could take it back." On July 6, 1999, the trial begins. The Duval County Courthouse is packed. Every seat in the courtroom is filled. Reporters line the walls. Sketch artists sit in the front row, capturing images of Joshua Phillips, who sits at the defense table wearing a blue button-down shirt and khaki pants. He looks even younger than 14, small, thin, fragile. He stares at his hands. Judge Elizabeth Centerfit presides. She is known for her fairness, her patience, and her no-nonsense approach. She instructs the jury, 12 Duval County residents, 7 women and 5 men, on their duty. You are here to determine guilt or innocence based solely on the evidence presented. Prosecutor Christine O'Connell stands to deliver her opening statement. She is calm, methodical, devastating. On November 3, 1998, Maddie Clifton was 8 years old. She loved soccer. She played clarinet. She had a smile that lit up a room. That day, she went outside to play, like she had done 1,000 times before. She trusted her neighbors. She trusted Joshua Phillips. And Joshua Phillips murdered her. O'Connell walks to a display board, where a photograph of Maddie, smiling, freckled, alive, is mounted next to a diagram of her injuries. Maddie was beaten with a baseball bat. She was stabbed 7 times. She was left to die under a bed, in the dark, alone. And Joshua Phillips went to school the next day. He ate dinner with his family. He slept in that bed, knowing Maddie's body was underneath him. For 7 days, while Maddie's family searched, while her mother screamed her name into the night, Joshua Phillips said nothing. O'Connell pauses, letting the weight of her words settle. This was not an accident. This was murder. and we will prove it. Defense attorney Richard Koritz stands next. He is older, gray-haired, his voice gentle. Ladies and gentlemen, this is a tragedy. There is no denying that. Maddie Clifton's death is heartbreaking. But Joshua Phillips is not a monster. He is a child who has been abused, terrorized, and broken by his father. A child who panicked. A child who made a terrible, terrible mistake. Koritz describes the Phillips household, Lawrence's violence, Melissa's inability to protect her son, Joshua's fear. Joshua did not plan to hurt Maddie. He did not wake up that morning thinking, "I'm going to kill someone." He swung a bat. It was an accident. And when he realized what he had done, he was paralyzed by fear. Not fear of the law, fear of his father. Koritz's voice cracks. Joshua Phillips is a victim too. And he deserves compassion, not a life sentence. Over the next 2 weeks, the prosecution calls witness after witness. Sheila Clifton testifies, describing the last time she saw Maddie alive. She cries on the stand, her voice breaking as she recounts the 7 days of searching. "I thought someone had taken her," she says. "I never imagined she was 4 houses away." Dr. Sandra Ortiz, the medical examiner, testifies about Maddie's injuries. She uses graphic photographs pointing out the skull fractures, the stab wounds, the defensive injuries. "This was sustained violent trauma," Dr. Ortiz says. "This was not one accidental blow." Detective Brian Hausman testifies about Joshua's confession. The videotape is played in court. Jurors watch as 14-year-old Joshua Phillips describes hiding Maddie's body. Several jurors wipe their eyes. Forensic experts testify about the blood evidence, the DNA matches, the luminol results. Every piece of evidence points to Joshua Phillips. The prosecution's most powerful moment comes when they present the baseball bat. O'Connell holds it up in front of the jury. "This is the weapon that killed Maddie Clifton. It was found under Joshua Phillips's bed. Her blood is on it. His fingerprints are on it." She sets the bat on the evidence table. This was not an accident. The defense calls its own witnesses. School counselors testify that Joshua was a quiet, isolated student who often came to school with bruises. A neighbor testifies that she once saw Lawrence Phillips grab Joshua by the throat and slam him against a wall. Dr. Linda Harper, the defense's forensic psychiatrist, testifies about Joshua's PTSD. Joshua Phillips has been living in a state of chronic fear. His father's abuse has conditioned him to respond to stress with dissociation, a mental shutdown. When he accidentally hit Maddie, his mind could not process it. He was not thinking rationally. The defense's strategy is clear. Paint Joshua as a victim, not a villain. But the prosecution dismantles this narrative on cross-examination. O'Connell questions Dr. Harper. "Dr. Harper, if Joshua was in a dissociative state, how do you explain the fact that he hid Maddie's body, cleaned up the blood, and went to school the next day as if nothing happened?" Dr. Harper struggles to answer. Dissociation does not mean a complete loss of awareness. He was functioning on autopilot. Autopilot, O'Connell repeats. So he was aware enough to hide a body, but not aware enough to call for help? Dr. Harper has no response. Joshua Phillips does not testify. His attorneys advise him not to. The risk is too great. On July 20th, 1999, closing arguments begin. O'Connell speaks first. For 7 days, Sheila Clifton walked the streets, calling her daughter's name. For 7 days, Joshua Phillips heard her. And he said nothing. That is not panic. That is not a dissociative state. That is a choice. A cold, calculated choice. O'Connell's voice rises. Maddie Clifton deserved justice. And justice demands that Joshua Phillips be held accountable for what he did. Koritz speaks next. Joshua Phillips is not a monster. He is a broken child. A child who has suffered more than any child should. Yes, he made a terrible decision. Yes, Maddie Clifton's death is a tragedy. But sending a 14-year-old to prison for life will not bring Maddie back. It will only create another victim. The jury deliberates for 6 hours. At 4:30 p.m. on July 21, 1999, the jury returns. The courtroom is silent. Judge Centerfit asks the foreperson to read the verdict. We, the jury, find the defendant, Joshua Earl Patrick Phillips, guilty of murder in the first degree. Sheila Clifton collapses into her husband's arms, sobbing. Joshua Phillips sits motionless, staring at the table. On August 5, 1999, sentencing takes place. Florida law mandates life in prison without the possibility of parole for anyone convicted of first-degree murder, regardless of age. Judge Centerfit addresses Joshua Phillips. You took the life of an innocent child. You robbed a family of their daughter. You shattered a community's sense of safety. The law requires that I sentence you to life in prison without the possibility of parole. May God have mercy on your soul. Joshua Phillips is led out of the courtroom in handcuffs. He is 15 years old. In the years following the trial, the Clifton family struggles to rebuild. Sheila and Steve move out of Lakewood, unable to bear living on Caesarea Boulevard. They settle in a quiet suburb outside Jacksonville. They rarely speak to the media. They attend therapy. They try to move forward. In 2004, Southside Elementary School dedicates a playground in Maddie's honor. A bronze plaque reads, "In memory of Maddie Clifton. May her light always shine." Sheila attends the dedication, her face hidden behind sunglasses. Joshua Phillips remains in prison. In 2012, the U.S. Supreme Court rules in Miller v. Alabama that mandatory life sentences without parole for juveniles are unconstitutional. Joshua's attorneys file for resentencing. In 2017, a Florida judge upholds his life sentence, ruling that the crime's brutality justifies the punishment. As of 2025, Joshua Phillips is 41 years old, incarcerated at Union Correctional Institution in Rayford, Florida. He has never been paroled. He will likely die in prison. Sergeant Michael Tanner, now retired, still thinks about the case. In an interview in 2023, he said, "I've worked hundreds of cases, but Maddie's is the one that stays with me, because it was so close. She was 4 houses away. We searched everywhere, and she was right there." Detective Brian Houseman, also retired, said, "I've interviewed a lot of killers, but Joshua Phillips was different. He was a kid, and I couldn't reconcile that. How does a 14-year-old do something so horrific? I still don't have an answer." Dr. Sandra Ortiz, the medical examiner, said, "Maddie fought. She didn't go quietly. She fought for her life. That's what I remember most." On a warm October evening in 2025, Sheila Clifton drives to the playground at Southside Elementary School. She parks her car, walks to the bronze plaque, and places a bouquet of daisies, Maddie's favorite, at its base. The sun is setting, casting long shadows across the empty playground. A swing creaks gently in the breeze. Sheila stands there for a long time, her hand resting on the plaque, her eyes closed. "I still hear you," she whispers. The wind carries her words across the playground, over the swings, past the slide, into the evening air, persistent, aching, eternal. Justice came, but Maddie never came home.